Few things make a game more interesting than a good villain, and I'm not necessarily talking about the quality of the villain, but rather maybe they have good intentions. Today, gameranx brings you 10 video game villains who were not entirely wrong. A real quick spoiler alert, this video is filled with spoilers. There are a ton of spoilers in this video. We're going to talk about it as if everybody has played all these games, so if you hear the name of a game and you don't want it spoiled for you, stop watching there. Number 10, Lord Gwen from Dark Souls. If you boil down his motivations, it's not that he was trying to do anything particularly bad. In fact, he was really just trying to stop the world from ending, which is basically our fight every single day in the real world. So he definitely didn't make the right choice lighting the flame per se, and it wasn't exactly an easy choice to make. Not necessarily all the right information was in place for him to make an educated decision on that, but I have a little sympathy for that. And in the end, lighting the flame didn't actually even fix anything, so it actually kind of really sucks for him. I feel pretty bad for him. Number 9, Kessler from Infamous, who at times appeared very callous and horrible, really just kind of wanted to live the life that he wasn't allowed to live, and also chase off the beast. Painting him as a villain kind of sort of reminds us that we paint a lot of people as villains that maybe we just think are different. I mean, I'm not saying he was a perfect fellow, but Kessler, I think, had much better motives than an actual villain might. The true villain of the series was Zeke. He was the one obsessed with the Ray Sphere, and how ready was he to betray you for it? I would say pretty ready! Number 8, Paul Serene from Quantum Break. At the end of every single chapter, there's a small section where you got to play as Paul Serene. It was always decision-oriented, and really, most of the choices that you had to make, you never went, wow, this is really horrible, he really wants to do something bad here. At no point did I ever feel that about Paul Serene, and I felt like I had to kind of empathize with him in some ways on account I was seeing things from his perspective, at least for a short time. He's just doing what he thinks is right, although it may not be what's right. He wants to build the Ark because he wants to survive the end of time, which, given that's kind of what the game is about, the end of time that is, I get it. If we were all told that a nuclear bomb was going to head this way in a week, we'd spend that week trying to find some sort of bomb shelter that we could stay in. We might do some stuff that we're not necessarily that convinced that we would do without knowing that we were going to die if we didn't, and I think that Paul Serene kind of falls under that category, although maybe a bit on a grander scale. Still, number 7, Saren from Mass Effect. Okay, the guy was indoctrinated by the Reapers, so he was doing things that didn't really actually help anything, but in a lot of cases, he thought he was. In theory, what Saren wanted to do was save everybody from the Reapers because he thought he wanted to control them. And in some respects, this is also exactly what happened with the Elusive Man. And by the end of the series, he wanted to control the Reapers too and was indoctrinated and partly machine, just like Saren. It seems like that's a pretty easy path to get indoctrinated, is to think that you can control the Reapers. You'd probably be a little bit more bold as to what you think you can do around the Reapers. You'd get a little bit closer. You'd do a little bit less safe things involving the Reapers. I can beat them. I can resist them, for I understand what we need to do. Ultimately, there was a little bit of Saren left, but not enough. Number 6, Vayne Carudus Solidor from Final Fantasy XII. Vayne is the main baddie. He's consistently who you're fighting. He's the problem, so to speak, but he's on your side. In fact, you could almost even compare him to Saren in some ways. If you swap out the Reapers for a Curia, which is kind of a secret entity that dictates everything going on in the world. It really depends on perspective, but in a lot of ways, Vayne is fighting for freedom. Yes, he's kind of trying to bring down everything, but from his perspective, and probably a lot of other people's perspectives, what's going on in that game is kind of enslavement. And whether or not you agree with that, whether you think what's going on in the world is not necessarily the worst thing, the protagonists are kind of fighting for the status quo, which is maybe more peaceful and safe for them, but is it free? And that's kind of the entire proposition / conundrum of the game. What are you fighting for? That one probably goes down as the most morally gray as all the Final Fantasies, might I add. It's a good game. I think a lot of people gave that one not enough of a chance. It's a good game. Number 5, Dutch Vanderland from Red Dead Redemption. Dutch's philosophy is one that a lot of people out there can agree with. A hunter-gatherer type society where the government isn't interfering with everybody's lives. And I think to some degree that's actually admirable. In all honesty, the way things were in the Wild West, that's probably a more desirable situation for a lot of people. And while 2016 certainly isn't the Wild West, and I don't necessarily think that we should go back to hunter-gatherer at all, even a little bit, I get it. I understand it. I see why he wanted to do that in the world of the Wild West. But it's not like Dutch had bad intentions. He actually had pretty good ones, relative to where they were in the timeline of the world. Number 4, Pagan Min from Far Cry 4. So in Far Cry 4, you essentially get to choose a sort of puppet dictator. And Amita and Sabal are both, well, bad options. Their methods of control were kind of, well, both terrible. And although Pagan Min was not great by any means, we're talking about Far Cry 4. We're not talking about Star Wars. Pagan Min was definitely the lesser evil of the three, and the fact that, well, you had to install somebody other than him kinda sucks. He showed compassion for AJ, and, well, I don't think Amita and Sabal are capable of compassion at all. So, Number 3, Handsome Jack in Borderlands. All of Handsome Jack's actions in the pre-sequel were pretty much right. He did some shitty things. He killed some innocent scientists. He murdered a self-aware AI. But both of those things saved thousands of lives. And although his morality isn't necessarily, I'll do the right thing no matter what, he does whatever is necessary for the right outcome. Which is not necessarily good, per se, but it's certainly better than a villain. The problem is sometimes people get carried away in this and become villains. They start to think that everything that they do is correct, but I don't think Handsome Jack falls into that category. He actually kind of was doing good things. But you know, whatever. Number 2, Fallout 4's faction leaders. And let's just go ahead and get this out of the way. All of them had some sort of good point. Really, we're pretty much all right in their own specific manner. The Institute's big thing was that humanity needs a powerful force through technology to help it rebuild the world, and is that wrong? I sincerely doubt that's wrong. The Railroad was right about the synths being property, being a horrible thing. They were sentient, they could think, they have feelings, they're like humans in many ways. And the Brotherhood, from their perspective, was not that difficult to understand why they thought synthetic humans were dangerous. I don't necessarily agree that they were an abomination, but from their perspective, the things that they'd experienced in their history, it made sense. None of these people were really thinking in a manner that was terrible. It made sense from their perspective. Granted, most of the time they were always using bad methods to move forward on these things, except for maybe the Railroad. I like the Railroad. And finally, number 1, Big Boss from the Metal Gear games. Big Boss is kind of the ultimate good guy who was a bad guy. In the original Metal Gear games, he was really kind of just a cackling bad guy. But throughout the course of the Metal Gear Solid series, we learned exactly why he was doing what he was doing in those games. And it's not that he was a cackling bad guy, it's that a lot of shit went down. A lot of stuff that placed a great deal of mistrust in all governmental institutions. I really can't blame Big Boss for wanting to completely skirt the idea of a government. I don't really think that it was wrong of him. They betrayed his trust so badly and in so many ways. In just Metal Gear Solid 3, that one specific game, and then over the course of the next few Big Boss-oriented Metal Gear Solid games, acted often as outright villains towards him. A lot like Dutch from Red Dead Redemption, I completely understand where he was coming from when he said, we gotta do Outer Heaven. That's something we gotta do. In the end, Big Boss didn't care so much about being a hero, a legend, or having a legacy. He cared about being free. And if you put his life in context, he certainly didn't feel free, and he had every right not to. And again, in our world, is a private military hangout sort of a good idea? No. But we aren't talking about fiction here. If you played all the Metal Gear games where you played as Big Boss, you understand Big Boss. I get it. I have empathy for this man. I get it. What was your favorite doing the wrong thing for the right reasons type fella? Any villains we missed that you particularly like? Let's meet in the comments and have a discussion. If you enjoyed this video, please click like. And if you're not subscribed, now is a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every single day of the week, and the best way to see them first is a subscription. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at FalconTheHero. And we'll see you next time right here on gameranx.